around this big. All right, if it's a male, you might have lines like that from.
I don't have long enough nails to do ASMR, I don't think. Grave Robbing for Morons is a true found footage film, a VHS tape of unknown origin, passed around by horror buffs and tape collectors for years, before the internet as we know it even existed. Decades later, preserved on YouTube, it still captivates people. The 26-minute long video is supposedly a grave robbing tutorial, though I will admit, not a very good one. Our host appears to be a teenager, certainly no older than his early 20s. He's sitting in this cluttered, windowless room, probably a basement. His friend is recording him while he proudly shows off a skull and 2 femurs, which he says are the spoils of his second grave robbery. He's only done 2, but nonetheless considers himself to be in the position to impart his wisdom on aspiring young grave robbers.
This is a little boring, you know. I find no fear in holding it, toss it around, you know. Really, and everything uses a baton, you know. It don't matter to me anymore.
Our protagonist, who introduces himself as Anthony, also has a unique speech impediment, which he never acknowledges, but which makes it difficult for him to finish sentences sometimes, and generally adds a lot of character to the way that he speaks.
I'm secluded, so that way there's no interruptions, okay?
His face appears to be covered with cuts and bruises. There is a lot to talk about with Grave Robbing for Morons. After, of course, oh, you know what it is, a word from this video's sponsor! This is a special Sleep Awareness Month message from Helix. 1 in 3 adults do not get the encouraged 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, which is essential for cardiovascular health, immune function, and you know, like having a working brain. Good quality sleep improves memory function, emotional regulation, and the list goes on and on. Helix Sleep makes premium mattresses and bedding customized to fit your unique needs and conveniently shipped straight to your door. No matter what kind of sleeper you are, Helix is going to have something for you. Their lineup offers 20 unique mattresses and a variety of mattress toppers, so you've got soft, medium, and firm options, plus options for side, stomach, and back sleepers. There's cooling options, and if all of that sounds complicated, do not worry, because you can take a quick quiz to match you with your perfect mattress. If you sleep with a partner, you can take the sleep quiz together and find something that's the perfect compromise for the 2 of you. Based on my results, Helix matched me with their Twilight Luxe mattress. This beautiful mattress right here. It is their firmest mattress. I do tend to prefer firmer mattresses because of the scoliosis demons that live in my spine. Helix has been reviewed against hundreds of competitors and is the most awarded. The Helix Midnight Luxe has been ranked best overall mattress according to both Forbes and Wired. Helix also offers a line of mattress toppers that are designed to be used on non-Helix mattresses, so if you're looking to improve an old mattress, these are an excellent option for you. They've got the premium mattress topper for sleepers who are looking for added pressure relief, the Ergo Align mattress topper, which has 3 support zones to optimize spinal alignment, the Dual Comfort mattress topper, which is designed for couples with different sleep preferences. I have had my Helix mattress for almost 4 years now, which is crazy. I still love it. Me, my partner, our 2 beautiful baby Binguses are sleeping excellently on it. And if it makes you nervous to buy a mattress that you haven't tried out in person, don't worry, because Helix offers seamless returns and exchanges, as well as a 100-night sleep trial. There's also a lifetime warranty, there are financing options and flexible payment plans. I really like my Helix mattress, so if you are looking for a new bed, go check them out. You can visit helixsleep.com/strangeeons, take advantage of their March Madness sale going on right now, and get 20% off site-wide. And now I return you to your regularly scheduled grave robbing.
Try not to leave that many clues around, like videotapes, like exactly what we're making now. Don't make that many of them, alright? Don't make tapes, do not make records, because if you are caught, if they find those in your house, you will get caught badly. Alright, this video is that way you will learn if you're a beginner to this thing.
So the video begins kind of right in the middle of the action as Anthony is explaining that if there's any like scalp left on the skull, you gotta peel it off.
You know, pull off, it'll make a disgusting sound.
If you're stealing the bones of a specific person, like someone important, and you need to like prove that the bones are real, you should take a sample of hair with you.
So let's say they have a mustache, you bring that, definitely, alright?
The particular skull that he's handling has a set of false teeth, so you gotta keep that.
Take the dentures and you make sure they're with them, so that way the person knows who this person is, all right?
You gotta make sure you don't lose the jaw, okay? And if you want to reattach the jaw later, you should use springs to attach it.
And then it's fine, it's just like that.
This is something that is actually done. You see a lot on like medical models and replicas. If you want finger bones, good luck, because those are really hard to find and easily confused with toes. When you are removing the skull from its skeleton, because of course the skull is the most interesting part and the main thing you want. When removing it from the skeleton, you should grab it by the eye sockets and pull it backwards.
If there's nothing that can hurt you, do not be afraid. Pull it out like that. Do not pull it by the teeth, or else it'll break out like that, and you will have holes.
There might be some dried bits of brain left in there, so you're gonna have to clean those out. If you want to clean the whole skull, you should do so by dipping it briefly into diluted bleach. But don't soak it in bleach, because bleach will make the bones brittle. Older bones tend to be more brown. If you want to whiten them up, you can leave them, quote unquote, on your roof or something to bleach them in the sun. Once the bones are cleaned and whitened, you can make a cute little skull and crossbones design out of them if you so desire.
Find a way to fix this on, it'll look great. And if you also get the leg bones, it'll look even better like this. With both of them on it. Like that. It'll look beautiful.
You might find some kind of metal or glass implants in the bodies. It's kind of vague what he's talking about, but then he segues into talking about like pulling the the femurs out of the hip sockets. So I think he might be talking about hip replacements.
Right, so you grab the ball, you drag it forward, and it'll pop out like nothing.
If you want relatively clean bones straight out of the ground, you gotta find something that's at least 60 years old.
Now if you find something more new, you have to rub it and rub it and rub it, or you gotta wash off all the blood. Like there's another piece of brains. If you find something more new, you might find it in a chunk, right? And if you shake it, it won't sound crisp like this. All right, sounds very crisp. Now some of them might sound a little more fleshy-like, all right? It won't be fleshy, but it'll be soft. So you have to watch out for the drain in your sink, because it might get caught in there. All right, so what you do is you shake it out in the toilet.
You're gonna want to put the brain in your toilet, or actually a bucket. He changes his mind and says that you maybe just use a bucket. You have to make sure that you have different friends to all stand in different directions to make sure that the sounds of your grave robbing activities don't carry too far. If it's raining, that'll help mask the sound of your grave robbing. If it's windy, that'll make the sound travel farther. But also, if it's too nice of a summer night, well then the guards might be too active. So you have to pick a day where the weather's kind of shitty, but not precipitating too much. Also, if there's snow, they're gonna see your footprints, and that's bad. However, you could opt to wear your shoes backwards so that you leave backwards footprints, which straight up sounds like something out of Scooby-Doo.
Never leave witnesses. If you have to knock them out so that way they think it's a dream. It's best not to kill, but if it's necessary, do it.
When you are leaving the cemetery with your bones, you don't want to carry them in a plastic bag, because then everyone's going to be able to see the outline, okay? You got to use something like a paper bag or a backpack to hide the shape. You can sell skulls to magic shops for people to use them in rituals.
I think you could get around $250 for one of these. If you get a leg bone and it's carved into a necklace or something, you might get around $650 for it. It's really worth it, because a lot of people won't do this. And and this is worth a lot of money, because it's real.
Just make sure that you stay secretive, and you make sure that you use a pseudonym when you're doing your crimes.
So while you're in the shop or even in the neighborhood, do not say your real name or anything. Right? If you have friends with you, ask them to switch your name.
Also, if you want, you can just dig up fresh bodies for a thrill too.
If you find something fleshy, that bugs you out. Seriously, because it really catches you. It smells, it's hard, but in a way, it's weird and everything. You can see what the person looked like when they first died.
The cameraman only speaks once in the video, and it's to point out that the head would probably be harder to remove from a fresh body, so maybe you should bring an axe or something if you're doing that.
Yo, check it out. If they get something new, you have to bring some kind of tool, man, because to get the head off, like, this is so old that you can just pull the head off.
Anthony appears kind of frustrated for a moment before saying, no, you don't want to damage the bones, so like maybe bring a knife, but not an axe. You're gonna need actually at least 6 people to pull this off, okay? You're gonna need 3 people to alternate digging, and then you're gonna need another 3 people to keep watch. That's ideal.
You have to make sure you do not get caught. If you get caught, this is a serious offense. And I know it. I don't know why I did this. It's fun. I like it.
Fuck.
The night before you do it, you should get laid.
Always stay sober while grave robbing.
Don't drink like I've been drinking. So other than that, it's virtually easy. It's a nice business if you find the right people to buy.
Your first 4 or 5 graves that you rob, okay, that's just going to be for fun. That's just going to be for the thrill and the skulls. But after that, you're going to want to start trying to turn this into a business. And to do that, you're going to need to rob famous people's graves.
It's like if you want a Melvis or something, you get at least $1 million for it.
For these bigger heists, you're obviously going to want to ask for half the money up front because this is a serious heist.
This was made by Anthony. Well, as a matter of fact, let's forget the last name. It's Anthony and Gino, okay? This was made by us two. Also, Bucci and Daco, I'm also helped. I like to put them in this, but they're not here because they really helped and everything. Because we're the forefathers, me, Daco, and Bucci and everything. We're the first ones who opened up and everything. We made this trend from now on. This is a trend. We will keep doing it for the fun. And soon, and our next big hit is Houdini. If you're watching this video, then you'll know who it was. Bye-bye.
The question is, of course, is this video real? Are we watching the actual confessions of a teen grave robber? While some of his advice is nonsensical posturing, obviously, I've spent enough time in vulture culture and oddity spaces to know that some of it is accurate. Bleach making bones brittle, teeth and jawbones being easy to lose because they're just not attached once there's no flesh, and people who don't handle skulls often don't think of that. Where did he learn this stuff? I know where I learned this stuff, but you couldn't just go on vulture culture Reddit in the 80s and 90s. Then there's the skull. That's like a real skull. That's for sure a real skull. There's the fact that he is scraping hair off of it. It has old-timey dentures. That there used to be people who were like, well, obviously the skull in this video is not real because teeth don't come out like that in one thing until they figured out it's an old dental bridge. Writer and filmmaker Jesse Pollock said in an interview, there are some people who believe the skull is fake, for whatever reason. But the fact is this. No prop shop, especially in the late 80s, was making fake skulls with that level of detail. One part of the skull that is never talked about is the fact that it features an elongated styloid process bone, also known as Eagle syndrome, a condition that can occur in human beings after they experience a throat injury. Absolutely no one was faking skulls with that level of detail back then, and I'd argue that no one is doing that now. Then there's Anthony's speech impediment, which is absolutely real. You don't see stuff like that depicted in media, and it would take a really good actor to fake it with that level of authenticity. And if he's that good of an actor, then why is so much else about this video so unpolished? If this was masterminded by some kind of prodigy SFX artist and an incredible young actor, then why did they never make anything else? Why has Anthony still not been identified decades later? We have to consider the possibility that it's not a genius hoax. It's a shitty basement video documenting a real crime and real desecrated human remains. Another very important question to ask, I think, is why would someone steal bones? It's not the 1800s. There's no underground cadaver market. Surely your local ethically dubious magic shop is gonna catch on after like the 3rd or 4th skull. So grave robbing isn't exactly a sustainable side hustle, and he obviously knows this. He obviously knows the premise of the video is flawed, hence the whole scheme about selling famous people's remains for millions. The problem with that is it's not a thing. It's definite. I was like 99% sure that was not a thing. But I did, just on the off chance, Google, have any famous people's bones been sold? To make sure. And the answer to that question, by the way, is only one of John Lennon's teeth. And he gave it to someone while he was alive, so it's probably fine. Someone once tried to sell a vial of Ronald Reagan's blood, supposedly collected following an assassination attempt, but they had to cancel that auction because of backlash, because apparently it is frowned upon to sell people's blood. So I don't think anyone is getting away with grave robbing Elvis and Houdini anytime soon. That said, buying anonymous human remains where you don't have to think too much about who that human person was, that is still very much a thing. Large online retailers like eBay ban the sale of human remains, with the exception of human scalp hair, mainly because of wigs. Etsy's policy is weirder than that, allowing teeth, nails, hair, and non-consumable items made with breast milk. I don't know what? My point is, if for whatever reason you want to own a human skull, you can. It's not that hard. I know where to find them. Give me a second. Let's just do a little... Oh, there you go. Okay. Cradle-boarded Mayan skull. This is an ex-museum piece. And it can be mined for 9,250 Canadian dollars. The skull can be shipped worldwide anywhere where the ownership of human osteology is legal. Should you own someone's head, though? Ethically, probably no. I say this as someone who loves weird, creepy shit, and my house is full of bones and skulls, but I draw the line at, like, actual, real human remains. Unless, there was some situation where it was like a loved one who, like, really specifically wanted me to have their skull after they died. I think then I would say, yes, I will honor your wishes for your skull, but, like, so far I think I'm the only one I know who's weird enough to be like, you need to keep my skull after I die. I don't think anyone would... Anyway, and like with this listing that I just found in 30 seconds, you will usually see something like former museum piece or like former medical piece, and you're supposed to think when you read that, oh sure, well that's fine. Because these academic institutions are obviously respectable. So no, that guy was almost certainly grave robbed or died in such poverty that even in death they got no rest or dignity. Even if it was 100 years or 200 years, even if it's 2,000 years old, do you think that a Mayan skull ended up in a Western museum through entirely ethical channels? Are we still falling for this? There's almost always something, some kind of unsavory history with human bones available to own. It actually kind of makes me wonder what happened to the skull and grave robbing for morons, Did somebody buy it at an occult store thinking, oh, this ancient and powerful skull, this poetic reminder of my mortality, but it's like, that's just someone's grandma who got dug up by a teen vlogger. I asked members of the Grave Robbing for Morons subreddit basically why they find this video so compelling, and part of one response from user Colt Inc. reads, it opens up some philosophical questions about death, what meaning or innate value inanimate bones really have, religion and morality in modern America, youthful indiscretion and the choices we make, even ownership and property, and what it means to quote-unquote steal from the dead. This is the question, really. When you die, is your body still you, or is it just stuff, objects, art supplies, decor, whatever other people want to use it for?
Like that. It looked beautiful.
Every person feels differently, about what they want done with their body. Every oddity collector feels different about what is okay to own. And so there's really no definitive answer to this question, but it is a question that is interesting to ponder. But I digress. I am here to tell you about the history of grave robbing for morons, the video mainly, not the ethics of bone collecting. That's just something that I think a tangent about is necessary given how long I have spent in those corners of the internet and the world. So back to the found footage mystery. Grave robbing for morons almost certainly predates the internet, being passed around by VHS collectors and horror buffs for years before we start to see traces of it online. The first verifiable online sighting of it that we have is from 2003. It was listed on a website called Shocking Videos, which sold VHS tapes of indie horror films as well as shocking videos. The site was run by Mark Johnston. He was widely known, respected staple of the online horror community back in the day, a known source for obscure films ripped from old tapes. But even he didn't know anything about where grave robbing for morons came from, listing the year of origin as 2 question marks. 2 years ago, user Scabby Baby came forward on Reddit, showing off a copy of the film that he bought from Mark Johnston in 2002, which is even earlier than the 2003 web archive. It's not strictly verifiable with hard evidence like the web archive, but it seems credible enough. Scabby Baby also explains that he used to order things not from the site, but from a print catalog, and recalls seeing grave robbing for morons in that catalog pre-2000. We don't have the catalog, but this seems like a pretty reliable account. Scabby Baby's DVD was digitized just 8 months ago and turned out to be the best quality version of the video that we've seen yet. People were then able to make a 4K restoration of it, so scrutinizing the background of the footage for details and clues has become easier pretty recently. The third version that we have that was found is actually significantly worse. It's significantly more degraded, probably from the tape being copied many, many times. This doesn't really tell us anything, unfortunately, besides being this just tantalizing window into this pre-internet world of tape trading. We have nothing really of these people's experience of the film besides this physical mark that's been left on it. Figuring out exactly how old Grave Robbing for Morons is hasn't been easy, but there are a few clues. At one point you can see that there's an Evil Dead 2 VHS visible on the table. That movie came out in 1987, so for a while people assumed that the video could be as old as 87. Later, a magazine on the table was identified as the July 1989 Fangoria Horror FX magazine, which makes the window in which this video could have been shot anywhere between 1989, the release of that magazine, and 2003, it being for sale on Shocking Videos, but probably more like between 1989 and 1999 if we factor in technically unverifiable but pretty credible testimony from that Reddit user who owns an early copy. Grave Robbing for Morons would have another surge in popularity around 2009 when it was included on a DVD called Insuring Your Place in Hell, sold on stumpydiscs.com, another source for weird and obscure horror. The implication of the title being, if you watch this, you're like a fucked up person, okay? This is fucked up stuff for creepy dudes. The disc included 4 found footage films. 2 of the other films, they were called Cooking with Huck Botko and Exploding Varmints, have explained origins now. They're gross and shocking, but not a mystery. The third one, Mortuary of the Dead, is somewhat mysterious. No one knows who made it, but it's not really as believable as Grave Robbing for Morons, and it hasn't had the same enduring interest. A YouTuber who investigated Grave Robbing for Morons, Slightly Sociable, was able to find the person who created and sold the Insuring Your Place in Hell DVD, and that person apparently wanted to stay anonymous, but they did tell Slightly Sociable that they got all of the videos from VHS traders and compiled them together because they all just seemed like they kind of had this found footage mysterious origin vibe. So he doesn't know anything about the actual origin of Grave Robbing for Morons either. It was in 2014 that the video was finally uploaded to YouTube, by which point it was already very old and iconic in certain circles, but YouTube introduced it to yet another whole new audience of people, and this is when widespread interest in it as a kind of mystery began. We owe most of what we know today to the investigators of Reddit. If this ever gets solved, it will probably be their doing. So, let's get into some of the popular theories that have risen and fallen over the years. The first suspect that this case produced was indie horror filmmaker Christopher Bucci. He also owned a website that sold obscure horror films in the 2010s. It was called King of the Witches, and it also offered Grave Robbing for Morons, had a little custom cover for it. Then an IMDb page was made for Grave Robbing for Morons, with Bucci credited as the director. And you will recall, one of the names that Anthony shouts out in the film is
Me, Daco, and Bucci and everything.
Bang, case closed. It's totally a hoax created by this indie horror director who was literally selling it, except it's not. It's not that. You see, Christopher Bucci was born in 1987, so even if this film was shot in the mid-90s, in the late 90s, he was a child. He also apparently pronounces his name Boucher, despite the fact that it really, really looks like Bucci written down. This theory is a rumor started by podcasters in 2017, and they, really insisted on it and harassed Bucci about it, despite him having the pretty good alibi that he was a toddler at the time it was probably made. One person apparently sent him a picture of a dug-up corpse along with a note saying, "Thanks for the inspiration," which is kind of a fucked up thing to do, even to a horror film director who likes fucked up stuff. Still not great. It wasn't him who made Grave Robbing for Morons, but could it have been another filmmaker? Could it have been a group of kids who wanted to be filmmakers goofing around? I know I have a ton of footage of my friends covered in fake blood from high school. Is this just an infinitely smarter and more sophisticated iteration of that teenage urge to make a freaky film? There is some evidence of that. Firstly, the magazine from 1989 that helps date the film, Fangoria Horror FX magazine. Fangoria was a magazine for horror movie lovers and filmmakers, but this one is a special edition specifically dealing with special effects and makeup. Definitely the kind of thing someone might have if they were interested in making horror movies, or specifically special effects like realistic bones or fake face wounds. There's what appears to be a tripod visible in the background sometimes. There's a microphone on the table. There are apparent artistic influences at play here. Jesse Pollock has suggested that one influence on Grave Robbing for Morons might have been the story of Ricky Kasso. Pollock wrote a book about Kasso, so I trust he's in a pretty good position to recognize these parallels. According to Pollock, Kasso is most famous for murdering his friend Gary Lauwers in a supposed satanic ritual in 1984. But a couple of months before that, he also dabbled in grave robbing. He had been inspired by his friend Randy Guthler, who had been arrested for stealing a skull and a hand from a mausoleum. While Guthler was being questioned by police, he told them he had heard that he could get $500 to $600 for a skull at a magic shop in New York City. That claim of being able to sell human skulls for hundreds of dollars to magic shops was repeated again in a heavily fictionalized version of Kasso's story, the book Say You Love Satan by David St. Clair, which mentions, quote-unquote, a store in Greenwich Village that pays $500 for a skull. According to Pollock, the book was popular with teenage metalheads and punk rockers in the 1980s, a subculture to which this kid pretty obviously belongs based on his, everything. So maybe he's just repeating a line from a book that he read and thinks is cool. I found that book, by the way, and first of all, it's awful. It's awful. But I thought I would at least force myself to read the main grave robbing scene, just to do my due diligence, see if I could find anything else familiar. By the way, they're specifically robbing native people's graves because of some insane racist notion about arcane native magic in the bones or what. There's a couple of spells where you take old bones and grind them up and use them in rituals. Use them? Ricky was interested. Yeah, in one, you throw the powder from the bones into a candle flame to make it smoke. And the other, you grind up the bones and put some of the powder in a glass of juice, and you make a person drink it. Yuck, Debbie said louder now. I think that's Debbie's entire character, by the way. I know some witches and people like that. Gary watched as Ricky dug deeper into the grave. They have a skull on their altar, and they put a burning candle on top of it, and that candle burns down and drips along the face and sides of the skull. That sounds dumb, said Debbie. Well, Gary replied defensively, that's what they do.
Set it down, put a black candle on the top and let it bleed down. Let the candle wax fall and it looks nice.
Isn't that right, Rick? Don't some witches do that? Yeah, he said. I heard about that. He was perspiring now from the exertion of turning over the earth that hadn't been touched in at least 200 years. The 80s and 90s were the height of the satanic panic. This widespread paranoia about satanic cults living in your midst, sacrificing your white suburban children and drinking their blood out of skulls or whatever.
Sickening killings that might have been part of a satanic ritual.
We had activity off and on in this county for several years of some type of satanic practices.
It's not known just how widespread devil worship is in Arkansas.
It sounds cheesy now, but it was pretty easy to scare and shock people back then with the idea of satanic rituals. Why would a magic shop buy/sell skulls? Dark satanic rituals. They use them for the rituals. Obviously, it's the satanic rituals. A lot of alternative kids, goths, punks, etc., bore the brunt of weird made-up fears about Satanism, so it doesn't surprise me at all that some of them took that and embraced being scary and shocking even more, and embraced things like this book and being fascinated with death and bones. So let's say hypothetically that Anthony is repeating a line from a book that he thinks is cool. Okay. Unfortunately, that really doesn't answer all of our questions, because we must still ask, did he also rob a grave for real because he saw it in a book that he thought was cool? My opinion is that the reason that grave robbing for morons has endured and is so compelling is that we all know that on some level it is real. That kid's speech impediment is real. Sure, he's putting on a show for the camera, but it's not scripted. Sure, he probably filmed this because he wanted to be cool or to be a filmmaker. He probably came into possession of a real human skull and got drunk and thought, this is so awesome, I'm gonna do something fun with this and pretend to be a master grave robber. I don't think we can definitively categorize grave robbing for morons as real or as fake. It is infuriatingly and delightfully both at once, all the time. That's what I see when I look at this footage. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm projecting what I was like as an edgy teenager, but I think anyone who was ever 16 and liked morbid stuff and felt unbearably cool wearing their leather jacket and filmed something stupid they did with their friends recognizes this kid. There was one thing I think every single one of us can agree on, regardless of how much he was acting. That kid was a real person who existed. Someone out there knows that face. The only way to ever find out how real this video is to find him and ask him. Since the Christopher Bucci hoax theory was debunked, that's been where the Reddit investigation has been focused. Finding out who this is. What do we know about Anthony? Well, he has a New York accent. Plenty of people from that area have weighed in online over the years saying he's most likely from Queens or Brooklyn. He also announces that their next big hit is going to be Houdini's grave, which is in Queens, New York, so that seems to confirm it. If he's proclaiming his next crime and all the people he's going to do it with on camera, they're like probably not traveling very far from home to do it. He probably mentions Houdini's grave specifically because it's the closest famous grave to where he lives. And no, by the way, Houdini never got grave robbed. His grave has been broken into and vandalized a number of times, but his remains have never been taken. It's also worth noting Anthony's Spanish pronunciation of the name Taco. Our protagonist, he's very ambiguous looking. People have hypothesized that he could be anything from Italian to Native American, so his Spanish pronunciation could be a small clue that maybe at least one of his parents came from a Spanish-speaking country. It's not a huge clue, but it's a clue. His long hair and leather jacket would suggest that he's got some ties to the punk/hardcore subculture. Style was a much stronger indicator of belonging to a subculture back then. If he looked like this, we have a pretty good idea the kind of stuff he was into and the kind of people he hung around with. Punk shows could be pretty chaotic, and it wasn't uncommon to get injured, which could explain the cuts and bruises on his face. But, you know, a lot of other things could probably explain those cuts and bruises too. Many punks in 80s, 90s New York were squatters. They drank a lot or did drugs, were no stranger to crime. If he did drop out of school and sort of live on the fringes, then maybe that's why it's been so hard to find records of him. The online investigation has produced numerous suspects over the years. Sometimes that's been through scanning newspaper archives for articles about grave robbing arrests. You know, if he kept doing this, maybe he got caught. People found that in 1993, a cemetery owner named Anthony Casamasima was arrested for stealing a stained glass window from a cemetery on the Brooklyn-Queens border. So, not robbing graves for bones, robbing graves for valuables, but still, right location, right name. In fact, people started saying that when the kid in the video cuts himself off from saying last names, it sounds like he says his name is Anthony Cass before cutting himself off. I don't personally hear Cass.
This was made by Anthony. Well, as a matter of fact, let's forget the last name.
I just think that sounds like him cutting himself off suddenly. Some people disagree. Some people are still looking for Anthony's with last names that begin in Cass because, spoiler alert, it turns out Casamasima was not our guy. First of all, he was born in 1959, so he's way too old. And also, he looks nothing like the kid in the video. And let's say that the Anthony in the video really does reveal that his last name begins with Cass. He's probably just another Anthony Cass then. The internet is a big place, and coincidences do happen. Take the My Immortal authorship mystery, for example. What the hell are the chances that it was written by cringe teenage goths named Raven and Tara, and then a YouTube channel pops up by two kids of the right age with the same names and the exact demeanor you would expect? And it was two sisters doing a bit who had never heard of My Immortal. There was no relation whatsoever. With cases like this, when you're scouring the whole massive internet, it's easy to come across things that feel like incredible evidence. And sometimes they just aren't. Another popular suspect was a man named Matthias, who was also arrested for grave robbing in the 90s and confessed to cleaning skulls in his mother's yard for religious rituals. Unlike Casamasima, he was the right age and sort of looked like the kid in the video, so he was a preferred suspect for a while. He was active on Facebook, but appeared to be very mentally ill and Pressing him for information didn't seem like a great idea. Then a picture of him from the 90s in an old newspaper was found, and it definitely wasn't the kid from the video. So that lead is also no more. And then we've got leads from YouTube video comments. As you would expect if you've spent any time on the internet, there are plenty of people who pop up and go, yeah, sure, of course I recognize him. That's Mike. Yeah, I grew up with Mike. Sure, that's Jonathan. I can tell you his sordid tale. His name was actually Anthony Iorio. I remember it well. You know, I think I saw him in Montreal once in 1997. I don't remember his name though. We grew up together, haven't talked in forever, but I heard he got his life together and became a lawyer. The guy with the grave robberies is from Red Hook, Brooklyn, goes by the name of Screws. He's been dead damn near 20 years now. I'm surprised that no one knew that common knowledge by me. It was the local scuttlebutt back in the early 90s. When I was a teenager, he ran a chop shop too back in the day. Bootleg movies, knockoff clothes, you name it. That's how he got the nickname Screws. He used to screw everyone over. From what I heard, they found him in Whitestone in a dumpster by the bridge with his knees parallel with his ears. He'd been bent backwards in the wrong direction. So this is clearly a creepypasta and not a real lead. And yet this Screws backstory for him is the one that gets circulated the most online, which, you know, fine, whatever. I'll admit it. It does have a little more panache than saying, oh, that's Mike, he's a lawyer now. But it's so stupid. But our spunky young grave robber, he's probably not Mike either. All of these leads from random YouTube comments, and some will probably pop up under this video too, they're probably bullshit. Usually what happens is that somebody from the Reddit community will try to get in contact with the commenter to see if there's anything to it, anything that can be verified, and so far, absolutely not a single one of these has panned out into anything interesting. If the mystery of Anthony's identity ever gets solved, it's probably going to be because someone who knew him comes forward and proves it, instead of just leaving ominous YouTube comments that they pulled out of their ass. How do you find a random teenager from the 90s, if you have his face, his voice, a pretty unique voice actually, probable location within New York City, probable first name, subcultural ties? Currently, it seems like people spend a lot of time looking at yearbook archives from local schools and online databases like classmates.com, but so far, all of the resources of the modern internet have been no match for one mysterious tape. What if Anthony was squatting or lived on the street, dropped out of school, was undocumented, died young? Maybe he really can just disappear from living memory. Except there's this footage of him, and now we can't explain it. Reddit user Despondent in NY writes, I grew up in Brooklyn and had cousins in Howard Beach, which is not far from Ozone Park. From what I knew/heard about as a kid, this video is almost certainly real. It's probably been brought up in other places, but I myself haven't seen it mentioned yet. Was Acacia and Bayside cemeteries between Pitkin Avenue and Liberty Avenue in Ozone Park, Queens. This kid looks and sounds like every kid that lived in those parts back then, so I'm sure he knew about those spots. Both were large, old Jewish cemeteries that were built on the outskirts of NYC before the entire area was built up. The care of these cemeteries was entrusted to a synagogue in Manhattan that fell on hard times, and basically the money disappeared. And with it, so did the upkeep. When I was a kid and into my 20s, these two cemeteries were like something out of a horror movie. Kids used to dare each other to make a run from one side to the other. It's about 40 to 50 acres and it's not small. I never did it. But those that did described how it was totally overgrown, like insanely overgrown, to the point that you couldn't even tell there was a cemetery there from the street. Graves were overturned, mausoleums were pried open, skeletal remains exposed and lying on the floor. It was a horror show, but it was private property, so nothing was really done about it. There were many tales of people seeing other people, many from East New York, Brooklyn's most notorious drug-ridden shithole, and only a few minutes walk down Pitkin Avenue, emerging from the cemetery at night with stolen items, rings and jewelry stolen off remains, basically anything of value, and walking back down Pitkin to sell at pawn shops for quick cash. My cousin's father-in-law had a construction business whose yard was close to the cemetery, and told us early one morning he saw two men walking with a skull in their hands by the locked cemetery gate. But my point is, this kid is a dead ringer for an Ozone Park, Howard Beach kid in the late 80s, early 90s, and if he was, then he certainly knew about these cemeteries, and may have been definitely prowling them for valuables and morbid souvenirs. Many people were during that time period. OP later comes back with an update saying he sent grave robbing for morons to his cousin who lived in that area, and his cousin doesn't recognize Anthony but says, yeah, there were tons of kids like him back then. He probably didn't make any money selling skulls because that's not really a thing, but it was pretty easy for a kid involved in some shady stuff to end up with a skull at the time. He added that whoever Anthony was, there was a good chance that he was dead now because, quote unquote, so many of them were killed in petty mafia wannabe shit and drugs. The thing about the unkempt cemeteries reminds me a lot actually of the Tumblr bone stealing witch scandal from like 2014, 2015. The person in that case lived in New Orleans, which is generally a very wet place. The reason there's so many above ground tombs in New Orleans is because if you bury bodies under the ground, they might come back out of the ground when things get particularly wet. So that's how the person in that case was just innocently finding human bones on the ground. You know, it still wasn't ideal to take them and sell them online. All I'm saying, there are technically more ways than deliberately digging up graves under the cover of night to come into possession of human remains. I return to my point, that I don't think grave robbing for morons can be called fully real or fake. Are the bones real? Yeah, almost certainly. How did this weird little punk kid get them, and what the hell is he talking about? That is the question that has plagued us for decades and may very well never have an answer. I'm starting to find this skull to be very comforting to hold. My mom bought me this when I was like 15 because she was trying to be supportive of my emo phase. And it's like the one thing that remains from my teenage bedroom because it rules. Thanks, Mom. Now I'm rambling about my beloved skull because that was my deep dive into grave robbing for morons. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And of course, an obligatory, have you seen this boy? Because we'd like to know. If you or someone you know who this person is, that would be really, really awesome. For now, strange out, and I will see you in another video very soon, my friends.